When they get back in session,
Yeah.
do you believe you know the way to get things done for the American people so that we don't have another shutdown of the government, which effectively punishes everybody else except the lawmakers?
There is a very simple way to doing this, which is the Senate passed a budget and the House passed a budget. And, maybe you're not old enough to remember Schoolhouse Rock, but
No, I remember it.
Remember how the bill gets passed? The House and the Senate try to work out their differences. They pass something, they send it to me, and potentially I sign it. We like to make things complicated, but this is actually not that complicated. Congress doesn't have a whole lot of core responsibilities. One core responsibility is passing a budget, which they have not done yet. The other core responsibility that they've got is to pay the bills that they've already accrued. And if Congress simply does those two things when they get back, then the economy can continue to recover, and folks out there who are working hard or trying to find a job will have some sense of stability, and we can start thinking about things like college education and some of the big structural changes that we have to continue to make to ensure that we're competitive.
How much of the lack of action in Washington do you put on yourself in terms of blame?
Ultimately, the buck stops with me. And so anytime we are not moving forward on things that should be simple, I get frustrated. And I've said before, and I continue to say, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get Congress, and Republicans in Congress in particular, to think less about politics and party and think more about what's good for the country. And then finally, now what we've got is Republicans talking about the idea that they would shut down the government. Bad for the economy, bad for not just people who work for the government, but all the contractors and the defense folks and everybody who is impacted by the services that they receive from the federal government. We should shut that down because Republicans, after having taken 40 votes to try to get rid of Obamacare, see this as their last gasp. Nobody thinks that's good for the middle class. And I've made this argument to my Republican friends privately. And by the way, sometimes they say to me privately, I agree with you, but I'm worried about a primary from somebody in the Tea Party back in my district, or I'm worried about what Rush Limbaugh is going to say about me on the radio. And so you got to understand, it's really difficult. I can't force these folks to do what's right for the American people. But what I sure as heck can do is stay focused on what I know will be good for the American people.
There's been a lot of discussion about what the NSA does
Yeah.
and the surveillance programs. You have said it is not the business of the U.S. government to spy on its own people. But the more that seems to come out, the more questions seem to be raised. Are you confident that you know everything that's going on within that agency and that you can say to the American people, it's all done the right way?
Yes, but what I've also said is that it can only work if the American people trust what's going on. And what's been clear since the disclosures that were made by Mr. Snowden is that people don't have enough information and aren't confident enough that between all the safeguards and checks that we put in place within the executive branch and the federal court oversight that takes place on the program and congressional oversight, people are still concerned as to whether their emails are being read or their phone calls are being listened to.
Especially when they hear that they are and mistakes are made,
Well,
shakes your confidence.
What was learned was that NSA had inadvertently, accidentally pulled the emails of some Americans in violation of their own rules because of technical problems that they didn't realize. They presented those problems to the court. The court said, this isn't going to cut it. You're going to have to improve the safeguards given these technical problems. That's exactly what happened. All these safeguards, checks, audits, oversight worked. Now, I think there are legitimate concerns that people have that the technology is moving so quick that at some point, does the technology outpace the laws that are in place and the protections that are in place? And do some of these systems end up being like a loaded gun out there that somebody at some future point could abuse? Because there are no allegations, and I am very confident, knowing the NSA and how they operate, that purposely somebody's out there trying to abuse this program or listen in on people's email
You're confident in
phone calls.
that?
I am confident in that. But what I recognize is that we're going to have to continue to improve the safeguards. And as technology moves forward, that means that we may be able to build technologies that give people more assurance. And we do have to do a better job of giving people confidence in how these programs work. So what I've said is that I am open to working with Congress to figure out, can we get more transparency in terms of how the oversight court works? Do we need a public advocate in there who people have confidence in? But we've also got to do it in a way that recognizes that we've got some hostile folks out there that potentially are trying to do us harm.